Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos, as this is an educational channel designed to educate people on the issues of deconversion, of atheism, as well as biblical studies and theological issues which lead a person to atheism. One of the things that I had was a long biblical studies career, a long scholarly career, and a long ministry career, and here I am, sitting here, an atheist. Today's a Friday video. I'm actually recording this on Thursday. I stayed home from work today because I wasn't feeling very well. I'm feeling a little bit better, at least well enough to do a video. And so I'm going to record Friday's video addressing a few comments today. So it's almost 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. So if you drop a comment after that, it'll have to wait a week. But I'm going to deal with the 3 comments I have today, and I think they're all good ones. So this is kind of where we're going to be at for today. So oldest comment first. Dealing with the perils of biblical study, pagan atheism, and other. Freebird of Reason, always good to hear from you. Says, thank you, good chat today. Interesting about the fishing business, a different way to see it. What I thought is, what is your thoughts on Christians wearing gold, rings, earrings, diamonds, pearls? I asked this because I thought the Bible spoke against like tattoos. Maybe a strange question, but I look for the double standards in family members who preach and act so high and mighty. I think so many questions. I have so many questions, but this one may be wrong about and may need to dismiss. Thanks again. You're talking to a guy who was once asked by a friend because he had a young daughter in college. She was like 18, 19 years old, and she had some friends who were heading to one of the tropical islands that year. And the rest of her friends were encouraging her to basically, because this island allows topless sunbathing, to go topless and sunbathe with the rest of them. And she was going to do it, and her father was trying to talk her out of it. And so the friend of mine said, what would you give such a father of advice based on the Bible? What followed was me doing quite a 20-something part on my blog, All Things Rabyd, a long time ago, called The Bible and Nudity. And I discovered something about modesty and nudity and the wearing of gold rings and diamonds and pearls and the wearing of clothes. The Bible actually doesn't really speak to it all that much. And it uses a fairly simple word, modesty. A couple of things that would be notable. For instance, in Christianity, the early Christian church could not have told its members to wear clothes for a couple of reasons, because a lot of the members of that early church were slaves. And often slaves, male and female, didn't wear any clothes, or they wore very, very little. In fact, nudity and nakedness was actually considered to be modest, to be somebody of a low standing. We kind of take it for granted. Clothing is a dime a dozen for us, but back then clothing was something that was an expense, and so people weighed it very, very heavily. They of course had cheap stuff, but it wasn't very good, and it just barely covered, and a lot of times slaves just didn't wear anything. This was particularly with rich households that had a lot of slaves. It was often common to have their beautiful slaves stand naked all around as decoration. So the idea that one of those could have accepted Christ, what are you going to tell them? That they got to start wearing clothes despite their master's desires? This is the same book that tells slaves to be obedient to their masters, which would also included nuptial rights with female slaves by male owners, and the opposite direction as well. So, you're talking about a culture with a lot of slavery in it. So modesty in terms of modern understanding of values, not very good. I went through the whole Bible. I couldn't find one thing even where the Bible talks about nudity in a very negative connotation. In fact, it's interesting that when the creation story has us created good and perfect, we're naked. It's only when we sin that we're required to wear clothing. It's this starting of the discussion that kind of got me going. And I had to give my friend the advice. I said, if she wants to nude sunbathe or topless sunbathe, that's her business. It's really not an issue from the Bible. I can't really prove it. So I think what you're also referring to, Peter does address it, but the way he addresses it is kind of like this. He says, listen, it's not just that a woman needs to dress modestly, not with but they have to have a modest spirit, a modest integrity of heart is more important than how they dress, is exactly what Peter really says. A lot of people have taken that passage in Peter and pushed it way to the nth degree. So, you have that issue there where, people say that this is talking about, well, it's telling Christian women to wear this, this, and this. The Bible actually never tells you what to wear. It tells you to be a modest person, to have humility. It's one of the few good points of the Bible, I think, one of those accidental good things. It never tells you specifically what to wear except for, talking about head coverings, and that may very well be women should have long hair, men should have short hair. Kind of thing. So that's not really an issue. As far as the tattoos, the Bible is very much against tattoos in the Old Testament law for the Israelites. In the same, it's funny, I saw a meme once where it had a guy with a tattoo on his arm against homosexuality. That the Bible says that, men shouldn't lie with men like lying with a woman. And then somebody pointed out the irony that in that same chapter is also a prohibition against tattoos. So the Old Testament does prohibit tattoos. The New Testament is pretty mum. The thing about the New Testament when it comes to moral questions and specifics is because the Gentile church is so diverse with such divergent cultures, there's not a single unified culture. I think it would have been very difficult for early Christianity to come down with hard standards of what to wear and what not to wear. So I would have to say that, if a person had a tattoo, what are they going to do about it? Remove it? They got it, and so there it is. So since becoming a Christian, do you add these things? Yeah, go for it. I mean, I never could find anything as a biblical scholar that prohibited tattoos from a New Testament point of view with its doctrine of freedom and liberty. It was just the whole issue for a Christian in that context. If you read Paul's discussion of liberty in 1 Corinthians 8, 9, somewhere in there, 6, he talks about the fact that we're free to do anything. It's just we shouldn't allow our freedom to become a stumbling block to fellow believers. That was his argument. I would now say, as an atheist, I don't care. I think these prohibition things are nothing more than control mechanisms to control people's thoughts and behaviors. If you can control the way a person dresses, when they have sex, who they have sex with, and control their money, you control a lot of aspects of their life. And I think a lot of that is more religion than the Bible. The Bible is contradictory on this issue several times. And, there's just no way to cover all the details there. Free Bird of Reason again with the Tall Tale of Jesus 4.9, where I was talking about the healing of the invalid son and casting out the demons. Maybe these demons weren't even cast out by the man Jesus. Maybe even those words never even were spoken by this preacher. The story is just a story from the start and copied. It's how come the so-called story spread to the region and all the other fantastic events were not recorded in history outside the Bible, or were any events recorded outside of the Bible? A question of the keeping of the Sabbath holy, I'm sure, is Saturday. As Jews, people still keep Saturday as the Sabbath. I know a few Christians who keep Saturday as the Sabbath, but for the most, Christianity is Sunday. Is this a question that has no answers on how different denominations read it for practicality? Thanks for your thoughtful work. Thank you for being thankful. The thing about this story is I think it's just a story. I think it's part of the made-up part of Jesus' life where they start embellishing his life. It's every time we go through one of these, I know how Mark is much more simple. If he does go supernatural, it's very plain. He doesn't really go into details. He just kind of mentions it. It's Matthew it's Luke, it's John who really embellish the story or add to the story. John just straight adds stuff to the story, and there's just no way to get it. There are very few faithful things copied outside the Bible. A lot of Christians, apologists, run to Josephus, but all Josephus really says is that there was an insurrection and that there was a guy named Jesus. This is why I say I think Jesus of Nazareth was a historical figure. It's just his life was taken by his disciples and completely blown out of proportion of what it actually was. There is a mention of that, but it also could be translated some other name. And once again, Yeshua is like one of the most common names. It's like calling somebody James, so it's like, it's such a common name. Who was it? So you have that issue. There's a few guys that mentioned, that Christians worshiped Jesus, but it doesn't mention Jesus himself. It simply mentions that Christians worshiped Jesus. Doesn't say if he was a real guy, doesn't say anything about it. And by the time a lot of these people write, it's 2nd, 3rd century, so Christianity is there, and all the major players are dead. So we're just basically at that point dealing with oral tradition and the gospel stories. So there you have it. Question on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the 7th day, which is Saturday. The Jews still keep the Sabbath on a Saturday. Some Christians, I think it's the Seventh-day Adventists still keep Saturday as the Sabbath. In fact, I had a few Seventh-day Adventists in my circle of friends, and they're very proud of that. I am a Sabbath keeper. I'm not a Sabbath breaker. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's like it's that religiosity leading to pride. But most Christianity is Sunday because Jesus Christ rose on the first day of the week. So they made it the Lord's Day, the first day of the week. There really is no good answer to it other than religious people look at the text, look at it differently. Some of them interpret it a certain way. Some other people determine it another way. So it's kind of one of those things where it really depends on the denominations. I don't know. The real thing about the healing on the Sabbath is this is kind of the first one in the story. Other ones he will do differently in the same context, and he'll get in a lot more trouble for it. But I think this, in the story, this is the one that starts the debate about whether Jesus should be healing or casting out demons on the Sabbath. So, because the whole, is this work? Okay, yeah, all right, whatever. So it always, to me, this whole theological question of whether people should heal or do work on a certain day of the week is just kind of ridiculous. If there's work to do that needs to be done, yeah, sure. And I would say, taking one day off in 7 is a good plan because it keeps you, just having one day where you just relax and enjoy life is always a positive. If you have another day to work at home, get stuff done around the house, and then you have 5 days to do your job, to me, that's a pretty good system. I mean, I'm not going to get into all that. That's not a hill I'm going to die on. When this was, it doesn't really matter to me. To me, all days of the week are the same. It's a question of how I'm going to order them. As an atheist, I really just kind of look at my days of the week and say, what am I going to accomplish today? Am I taking a day off? Am I going to work around the house? Oh, I've got to go to work today. So that's kind of one of those things that you just have to deal with when it comes up. Jonathan Ganish, on my latest video on Peter's mother-in-law being healed and his tour of Galilee, what if the mother-in-law was a hag that's an egg? Should Jesus heal her? In any case, we now have a good healthcare system, so no need for Jesus. That is a very interesting point about ancient texts in general, but about Jesus in particular. Why healing miracles? Why the miracles? Why is the miracles that are in the Bible the miracles that are in the Bible, the nature of them? Well, think about it. In the ancient world, medicine sucks. So there's unexplained behaviors in people, which we would probably call epilepsy. We would call, diabetic fits. You'd have all kinds of mental illnesses, various kinds of mental issues and things that would have been equated to demons back then, but they would be considered problems. Then you also have people didn't always have food. Okay, so what are the nature of Jesus's miracles? He turns water into wine. Later on, we haven't got to this story yet, but he will feed 5,000 and 4,000 with breads and fish and all this other stuff, providing for them. Storms are deadly to fishermen. He stills one. Okay, so the sea is not that scary with Jesus around. And then healing. How many people would, I can't imagine the feeling of absolute powerlessness. A person, say, like Peter, sitting next to his mother-in-law's bed, and if they're, if she was a hag, that's an egg, I don't know, but it seems that they were, they don't really go into that part of the story. What if you, what if you have a mother-in-law you're actually fond of, or your mother, or a loved one, or a spouse? I mean, death was far more common back then, and to have somebody around that could heal somebody, I think, is a big part of legends. It's why so many gods of the ancient pantheon are healing gods. It's like every pantheon has at least one healing god, if not several. So it's like, I think that's because there's a desire here. If you don't have medicine that can help you, back then the medicine often hurt as much as helped. I mean, I'm fairly certain that many doctors killed as many patients as they saved. So that's not the issue. But if you have that feeling of powerlessness and somebody comes along and says, hey, if you pray hard enough, God will heal this person. I think it's a very interesting thing to think about. Why the miracles are the way they are? Well, it's empowerment over circumstances. Even the resurrection, if you really think about it, the overcoming of death. This is all classic ancient mythology tropes. It's just done in a different way to deal with a different audience at the time. So yeah, I mean, we have good health care now. I mean, people want to bitch about it, but trust me, if you were transported back even 200 years in time, you would say, oh shit, yeah, let me go back forward. If you suddenly had an illness or something wrong with you, or, I'd be dead. If I lived 200 years ago, I would have died at age 17 because I had appendicitis. Appendicitis, I would have had real tough antibiotics. It'll burst. I'll feel better. And then, a couple days later, I'm dying of infection. And then, I die. I would have been dead before I even hit 20. With modern medicine, that's identified. They cut me open. They remove the appendix. They sew me back up. I heal up a little bit, and I have a long, healthy life. I'm 51 years old, and well past 17, and that's all because of modern medicine. Immunizations, all the stuff that we now enjoy is not from a god. It's not from a magical source. It's people studying the way the body reacts. It's interesting. Most doctors will tell you that they're just trying to put the body in the best position where it can heal itself. We have a wonderful immune system. We have a wonderful healing mechanism in our bodies. And most of the time, what the doctors do is just try to enhance that, try to get that to work better, shut it down so they can get something else healed, shut down different parts of the body. It's just amazing to me what's accomplished these days. It's why I've done a video in the past and made some comments. The real sad thing about COVID-19 is we are making so many progressive things and it's getting so much better, but you can't talk about it because it's a political year and everybody's politicizing it. But the medical community and the scientific community right now, hats off to you, kudos. You're doing a great job. And unfortunately, the politicians aren't going to let anybody know that you're doing a good job because they want to paint this bleak, awful picture of how terrible our medical system is when you're kicking ass. I'm sorry, I look at the stats too, and what I see is a dropping death rate. No matter how many cases there are, the death rate continues to drop and stabilize. And by isolating the people that are vulnerable, we're getting a better handle on it. And when people do get it and they get it severely, we know how to treat it. More and more people are surviving. And that's credit to the medical community. All those prayers to God. It seems like if God really gave a shit about our health, he wouldn't put things in like COVID-19 in the first place. Well, that's it for the comments this week, and I want to thank you all for stopping by. Like, share, subscribe. I appreciate every subscription and every like. It's just a way to get some attention to the channel. And I hope someday that I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.